Hey, hello again. This is Joel Stewart doing another tying video. Doing again a bit of old school here. I'm going to do a fly called the Woolly Bug. You can see it right here. You'll see the finished product. Now let's get set up. So a little bit of history on this fly. I began tying. First of all, let's start. So the hook, using a Mustad 9672 size 6. You can use whatever streamer hook you like best. These are just what I have left over from my stash in the 80s. So this fly started out as a combination between two pretty basic patterns. The woolly worm and the girdle bug. Woolly worm, obviously a long-standing pattern, goes all the way back to the early days of fly fishing in Great Britain with the Palmer fly. So we'll start our thread here, and this is a key element. I don't typically do this, but on this particular fly, you've got to glue your thread here at the head. And you do that because as you get up here at the end, the head has a tendency to twist, no matter how well you tie your wraps down. So we've wrapped forward. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So it's a very simple fly. Has really three basic materials. It has rubber legs, olive chenille, and grizzly hackle. Last element would be bead chain eyes. We'll talk about them when we get to the end. So we start our rubber legs. I cut out two. So you got the hank of rubber legs here, and it's held in half with a zip tie. So I cut off two pair, and these are going to become the basis of all 6 legs, and then of course the tail. So just cut them in half. I'm not worried about perfect portions because we're going to trim them to size later on. I like to put my legs and tail in longer on the bench, and if I get to the stream and I feel like they're too long or they're getting swept back by the current, then I can shorten them up. If you do tie them in too long, that's exactly what will happen is the current movement will force the fly back along the shank, and you'll lose the effect of the rubber legs. So I tie them in with a fork, so a crisscross, and then to keep them forked, I put a couple wraps in there and leave the tail be. Take our chenille, measure it for length, and with the chenille, so you don't get a big material bump here at the back end, I take my scissor tips and I just peel some of that fluff, the actual yarn fibers, off of the 2 strands that hold it in the middle. So now you're really just tying in 2 single strands of thread to keep your material buildup down. Now pick a hackle. Again, I'm using grizzly saddle hackle here. This is not tied in like you did with a woolly bugger. You're still going to palmer it forward, but with the woolly bugger you tie it in tip first to give you that forward-facing hackle. Here we're going to have tied in butt first, and I'll explain that in a second. So I tie it curved side down, a little bit of feather hanging out, and give everything good wraps and secure it in place. Wrap forward to just in front of the hook point, and that's where our first leg is going to go. So the legs all go in the same fashion. Lay it parallel to the shank, about halfway. Give it one wrap. Pull it reasonably tight, not super tight yet. It's about half, that's good. Pull the front leg towards you. One wrap, that kind of locks that first wrap. Then a wrap around to put it in place, and then a couple wraps to keep it from coming loose. Work it back and forth and side to side. This is round rubber, so it'll roll a bit. And you really look at it so that it just stands out perpendicular to the hook shank. And now you're going to put 2 more sets of legs in, so you got to kind of do your eyeball here. So you're going to end your fly right up here. And so you want to divide that distance, and so you want to say a leg there and a leg there so you have them evenly spaced. So work your thread forward to that next leg point. So this fly, the girdle bug, would be this pattern with just the rubber legs, and then a woolly worm would be just this pattern with the palmered hackle, and both of which were flies I tied thousands of in my early commercial tying days, because they caught a lot of fish. I mean, an olive girdle bug caught fish everywhere, all the time on them. And the guy that taught me this pattern, a guy named Brian Kincaid, when I was working at Mountain Bait and Tackle in Great Falls, Montana, his favorite fly was a size 10 olive woolly worm with a brown hackle. Fished it everywhere. And this fly kind of came out of combining those two very effective patterns into this. As I wrap my chenille forward, one of the things I want to do is I don't want to crowd these legs, because you will change the lay of the legs. So you want to make sure the legs stay perpendicular to the hook shank as you wrap the chenille forward. And if you feel like you're crowding a little bit, you can back off or add on to that chenille. And we marked our ending point when we started our thread. Just a couple of wraps. The chenille can get bulky fast on you, so you want to make sure you're managing that and don't end up with too much bulk on your fly. I don't worry about wrapping it all down and making it smooth, because we still got the hackle to wrap in. So should work out that there's 2 turns of hackle between each set of legs, if we've done this right. And you can use hackle pliers if you want. I find that these Hoffman bugger packs, the saddles in them are plenty long enough that I don't need hackle pliers. Trim that off, and now we want to build a smooth head here, with the objective being we're going to tie a set of bead chain eyes in right back here. So the bead chain eyes, on this particular fly, the olive, I like the antique brass, but you can tie them in brass, shiny brass, silver, black. I get my bead chain, I actually go to the hardware store and go to the ceiling chain or ceiling lighting section, and this is ceiling fan or ceiling light chain. What I'm doing now is, when you cut that off, there is a piece of the wire that's connecting the chains together, and it can leave a sharp metal knob, and that one's not going to go away. So you want to be careful you don't have that on there. It'll cut your thread, and it'll also cut your tippet. So we'll start all over here with that eye. So I just used my scissor points to make sure it's pushed back inside, so I've got a smooth surface. That one's good, and we got that one good. So start your eyes right at the end of where the chenille started, one loose wrap, and as you pull that tight, the eyes will then kind of center in on where you started them. Then bring back another wrap. In these 2 wraps, now you can cinch them down, and now every wrap you're cinching it down as tight as you dare without breaking the thread. Do 3 each direction. Then I reach in, go under, and I'm doing wraps underneath the eyes. So on top of the hook shank, under the eyes, do 3 wraps there. And then a couple more wraps each direction. Don't worry about those hackle fibers. We can either trim them out. Personally, I leave them in. It just adds to the buggy effect. I don't worry too much about it, but if you're worried about the aesthetics of the fly, a couple of wraps up forward, and now we're just going to whip finish. And cinch that down. What you have there is the woolly bug. Trim that stuff off if you like. So what I do with the legs to get them all even, I want them to be just slightly longer than the longest hackle fiber, which this fly I've used right about 1.5 times the hook gap. So again, on the vise I like to leave them a little longer. on the stream or lake, then I would trim them down. Got them all bunched together, slightly longer than that last one. Give them a nice trim. Get the tail, pinch it together and trim it about the same length. And there you have finished the woolly bug. I have tied this fly on everything from a size 12 to a size 2/0, and have caught everything from high mountain wild trout to bonefish and redfish. I think it imitates everything from a stonefly nymph all the way up to crab or even a shrimp as it's bouncing across the bottom, depending on the color pattern you tie it in. So I've tied it in everything. This is the basic fly. I have tied it in hot pink, chartreuse, orange, purple. My go-to colors are black, brown, and olive. I've tied it in orange to fish in San Diego Bay, and it just catches fish everywhere I fish it. I've tied it on a 60-degree hook with a lead eye so it flips upside down, and fished it that way. I've tied it with a weed guard to fish it weedless. It's just buggy. You can see those legs. Every little movement, tremor, current makes this fly wiggle, and it just looks buggy, and the fish love it. Hope you like this video.